Uh, James Baker. Morning, mate.
Mate, you well?
Mate, I'm very excited to have you here today, mate. I really am.
Thanks for
Do you know
having
why?
me.
Yeah, do you know why I'm excited to have you here?
I have no idea.
Because, mate, you are so hard. You're so busy. You're one of those agents that, mate, your time is seriously precious, really precious. So I think the group's really lucky to have you, and I'm certainly very, very grateful for you to be here. Um,
Pleasure.
James Baker, I might just introduce. Uh, Kind of got into real estate a bit. He did get into real estate later, not like a lot of us. I started seeing James Baker's name. I've never told you this, James, because I used to study the real estate market in Sydney, and I used to see this name, James Baker McGrath, up on Sydney's northern beaches a little bit. And then I started to see it a little bit more and more, and I'd read title deeds and sold this and listed that, and he had some good competition up. McGrath was never strong up on the northern beaches, and he started to gain market share. And I used to notice it. And then a few years, and then he kept growing and growing and growing. And then about 3 years ago, I think they reached out to me. Like James and his business partner Adrian reached out and said, "Mate, we'd love to, have a session with you." And we've been working ever since. And I've got to say, he's the most impressive, one of the most impressive. I really rate Andrew Liddell respect-wise. I'll put James Baker up there with Liddell. And I've known Liddell 15 years. I've known James Baker probably for 3 years. Um, he's got great listings. His average sale price has gone up. I would hate to compete with him. I really would hate to compete with him up there. He's very likable. He has a big team, which we'll talk about. His business is growing. His and Adrian's business is growing. And they've got an amazing dynamic. So him and Adrian, his business partner Venturi, have got a similar dynamic to what me and Shannon had for many years. They surf together, they trust each other, they pool their commissions. They've got a really good thing going on. So is that a pretty good summary, James?
That was a very nice summary. Thank you.
Oh, is that you did get in a bit later, didn't you?
Yeah, so I cut my teeth in London in recruitment. So IT recruitment was supposed to be a structural engineer, but it wasn't really my the thing for me. So yeah, I did recruitment for about 15 years. So started in London, moved to Amsterdam, moved to Australia, ran a business in Sydney and Melbourne, recruiting across the whole of Asia Pacific. So I did that until I was about 35, 36, and then I moved to rural New Zealand with my wife. Sadly got divorced and came back here and got offered a job in real estate in Palm Beach, sort of just before COVID. Uh,
GFC.
the, yeah, the GFC hit. So it was the perfect time to probably not get into real estate, certainly the prestige end, because the nothing was selling. But it was a very good way to learn how to do things.
And how did you get offered that? Because I actually don't even know. How did you get offered the job in real estate, and how did you
So it
end up
was
in?
actually some people have been in the business for a while might remember Glenn Lee. So Glenn Lee, I
Yeah.
sort of knew him through my ex-wife, and I was here for a wedding in Palm Beach, and I just got to catch up with him, and he offered me a job.
Fantastic. So you got into real estate with no experience. You bounced around different countries, so you're new to Sydney, and you get in real estate. This is good actually because we might spend. So what were your first task? What were you asked to do, and what was your idea of real estate, and what was the reality?
I had a very different expectation. What was sort of painted to me was a lot easier job than I realised.
Mm.
I didn't know anyone in the Avalon Palm Beach area. I literally just knew my boss. That was it. So I didn't have kids in the local schools. Obviously, didn't grow up here. So I literally had to start from scratch. So I think the thing that really helped me was the way that I worked in recruitment and what I learned in London, which was, you know, like it was all about hard work. It was all about integrity. It was all about turning up. It was all, just the speed of operating.
Mm.
So you just had to be faster and quicker and better than everyone else.
Yeah.
Time management had to be like next level. Otherwise, if you were 5 minutes late for something, you just wouldn't get the business in London. It was so cutthroat.
Yes.
So that I think really helped me here because like Avalon and Palmy, the way things were the way real estate was conducted here was certainly a lot slower than what I was used to in business.
So if you think about that, everybody, James, no real estate experience, 35, ends up on in Avalon, gets offered a job with a guy called Glenn Lee, who, and just so you know, this market, right? It's like Balmain in some ways. It's a peninsula. And it's it's had like three agents that I remember that used to own it for 20, 30 years,
Mm.
you know. So it's a really tough market. What suburbs would you say your specialisation is, JB?
So I worked out of a Palm Beach office, serviced the Avalon area, the Avalon and Clareville area. I sort of looked at what the top agent was doing at the time. It was a guy called David Watson,
Yes.
and he predominantly did sort of the arterial roads
Yeah.
where a lot of traffic was going and sort of a fair bit of prestige. But he had a bit of a combination of prestige, mid-range property. So it was, I sort of figured out that was, I guess, made the business a bit more recession-proof.
Yes.
But also every time you got a signboard up, people are driving past it. So, but it was tough because I was up against the number one agent, and for 5 years it was just, it was like, yeah, it was super hard getting anywhere.
Yes.
I very nearly got out actually. I was 5 years in, and I think I missed out on five listing presentations in a row. I came second on each one of them. You know, when the owner says, "Oh, it's a flip of a coin,"
Yeah.
and I started making calls to people that I knew in the recruitment business, and fortunately, I didn't swap out, and then the phone just started ringing from all the 5 years of hard work prior. The phone just started ringing, and sort of really my career took off from there.
Yeah, good on you. And guys and girls, this is why next month I reckon we don't have a speaker, because if you think about it, the same, we're getting the same messages every month, just different. He, again, 5 years apprenticeship, grinding, doing whatever it took. Didn't feel like I was moving anywhere, and then boom. I'd like to just jump forward now to today, just so I can give everyone some colour on how far you've come, and then we're going to go back again, James. So today, James has a team of, personally and
So
within the business.
yeah, so there's 30 people now across the two businesses. We we opened up Mona Vale beginning of the year. We now have 9 staff in there. We've got about 21 staff in the Avalon office.
Yes.
So the Avalon office has been going now for 7-8 years.
Yes.
Total GCI for both businesses is around 8, but the potential for next year is huge because we've just brought on a whole lot of new talent, partnered up with Kelly Mullerville and Kirsten Bertram. So I think the potential over the next year will be somewhere between 10 to 12 mil.
For sure.
My personal team will be wrapping up. Well, it's nearly the end of the financial year, isn't it? So
Yes.
Monday, I think I've got an $8 million deal I'm hoping to secure by Monday, but we'll be over 4 GCI for this year.
So James's personal team will do just over 4, which is really strong. Him and Adrian have predominantly done most of the business with a number of other agents, but they've now recruited a lot. When I first worked with them, they had one office and they had about 18 staff. They've now got 2 offices, 30 staff, with some really good riders in there. Did you want to say something, James?
No.
So well done. That's really strong. And that market up there, how would you describe the market to everybody up there? How would you describe it?
It's a real combination of family, sort of there's quite a big chunk of the market's 2 to 4, so the family end. There is an investor market as well, but that's a lot. There's not a huge amount of investment. There's not a lot of apartments. Certainly in the Avalon area, there's a lot more in Mona Vale and Newport. And then there's a prestige end and a holiday home end as well, which is obviously your Palm Beach and parts of Clareville and Avalon, where you're talking anywhere really from 6 mil up to 40 mil.
Yeah, two things that have been really impressive with, particularly with James, everybody, is I've seen the quality of his listings and his average sale price probably doubled in the last 2 years, and not because of the market, his profile. So now he's getting 10 and 15s. How many $10 million plus sales did you have last year, James? Or in the last 12 months, sorry.
I'd say we about 6 or 7. We had
Yeah.
probably the best part of the year was the 3 deals that we put together in the space of a week. One was 14.25, 13 and 12, but they were all interlinked.
Yeah.
So we had the purchase of the 14.25. The owner there bought a property in Newport, which was the 13 million, and that person then bought a property in Palm Beach for 12. But the funny part of the story is there were 2 brothers. 2 of the vendors were brothers, one in Palm Beach and one in Newport. And it was almost like the money from the Newport one eventually bought the one in Palm Beach. But they all came together in the space of a week, which was probably one of the highlights of my career, I suppose.
Yeah, it was a big period. I think what's impressive is, and this is important for everybody, is because I was working with James for a little bit before that 3 domino thing happened. And so what happens is James used to sell predominantly $2 to $5 million houses, which is still really strong. He'd sell a lot of them and maybe only sell one $10 million house a year. He then picks up a big one of 15 or 20 and a second one, works them and gets a third one. Now all of a sudden, now he's working those ones, and now his brand, and he executed. They all sold. He promoted them, which we used to speak about, and now all of a sudden he's got that in his CV that he's actually sold that. So he's gone from selling one $10 million house a year now to several, which is a big jump, and the market's watching that. So for all of you guys and girls, you got to keep grinding and all of a sudden you do a couple and you'll find that you'll have a similar thing to James. And I think you're being light on, James. I think the business can double its commissions in the next 12 months because
I agree.
You're saying we did 8 million in GCI. If you had no one else new join, it'll do 10 or 12. Plus everybody new who's joined. You should be thinking of doubling at least.
I think a lot of agents, and if I look retrospectively, I should have been pushing into that higher end a lot quicker. I think there's a perception, as most agents, you feel a bit scared to sort of try and tackle that higher end. You just don't feel like you're worthy, and I don't see any reason why you should just be hitting into those properties, because I think a lot of the time the prestige properties go to people with more grey hair, and they care less, in many cases, because they've already earned their money, they've paid off their mortgage, so they're more likely to be a little bit less, maybe not giving the same service that someone that is a bit younger and more keen to get the business. So if I had my time again, I'd probably be pushing harder on those higher end sales and believing in myself that I could sell them.
Yeah, and your EBU, just because I had a question from Adam and Bobby, your EBU consists of?
So there's actually 7 of us, but I've got some part-time people in my team. So it's the people that have been with me for the longest. I've been blessed by having people stay with me for a long period of time. So Lauren's been with me for 8 years. So she's an agent, and she could be a standalone agent herself. She's amazing. She's got incredible influencing skills, and has a background in interior design as well. So she adds so much from a sales perspective, but also from an experience side of things as well to our team. And we've got Lyndall, again, loads of experience. She's probably been in the business for about 20 years, could be a standalone agent as well. So they're 2 my main co-agents. I've got Luke, who also works. He's sort of learning how to get into Palm Beach, so he's working under my wing, but he works with me on some of my prestige properties. Cameron, who's just joined, and then I've got 2 support people. So they both work part-time, 4 days a week.
Yeah. Adam, Bobby, did you have any questions about James's EBU, or does that make sense?
So just to confirm, he's got two agents which could essentially be standalone and doing their own thing. He's got
Luke.
two sales associates as well, which will be working under him, less about going in, building their own business and more about supporting him, as well as the two admin or support staff as well. Is that right?
That's right. So Luke and Cameron are sort of both um, they both want to be standalone agents and will be. So they're sort of learning how to do the role. So it's almost like a training academy. They're working underneath within my team, and at the same time, they're also developing their skills and you know they'll be standalone, you know, in a year, 2 years time.
And with the two agents that's been with you for the longer time, how you said they could be standalone agents, why are they not? Like, is it something where they're incentivized better, or is it like if they were standalone, could they not make themselves a lot more money? What is it that's had you keep them as part of your team rather than becoming fully standalone?
That's a really good question, and obviously one that we, you know, when we have our annual review meetings, I always talk to them about it and give them the option to be standalone. But I think we all agree that working together collectively is actually more powerful than working apart. So the things that we bring to the team collectively, I think is, you know, you get a times three, times four sort of factor versus if we just all worked independently. It wouldn't work anywhere near as well. So um, I think when you raise your profile as in an EBU, uh, I can close more deals because of that profile and obviously I guess the track record and experience. But if they were working as on their own, they probably would get less listings. And equally, I wouldn't be able to do as much as if I didn't have them supporting me. So I think a really effective EBU can't be, you need to have experienced people working with you to really take it to the next level. We would do a lot more, I think, if I wasn't also a principal and running two offices at the same time. So there is that component to it. But I think it's lovely to have people with that experience behind me because I know I can. Obviously, I am involved in every single listing. So there's over 70 sales that we've done this year. So I don't just pass them to them and they just do everything and I'm not involved. I'm very heavily involved with every property, but they do most of the stuff. And what I know, whatever I would say, they would say to a client or a buyer. So there's a high level of trust, particularly when you've got that tenure, 7-8 years of working together with someone. So I think in my mind, you know, we've developed such a strong relationship that is the secret, I think, to a really successful EBU is tenure. If you keep losing staff, obviously you're doing something wrong, maybe not, whatever it might be. But I've spent a lot of time on culture, not just within the business, but within my own team as well. So culture is key. If people are walking into your workplace and they're happy to be here, and no one's scribbling or doing the wrong thing behind each other's back, they're focusing on work and they're enjoying what they're doing. In my mind, that the culture has been the key success to our overall business and particularly into my EBU as well. And that's why people have stayed.
Yeah. Yeah, they've got a
Right.
good Bobby, they've got a pretty good, him and Adrian have got a really good, they think about their staff and their culture all the time. That's why I think their relationship's a lot similar to mine at Shannon's was. So that's really good, JB. Mate, if you to everybody, if we came and worked for you, what are the things you would promote for us to do in order for us to grow our individual businesses, JB, just from your experience?
So if you're coming to me as an individual agent, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think there's obviously my EBU and there's everything that's outside of my EBU. In many ways, a lot of the agents that work within the two offices are sort of intertwined and interconnected to my EBU and also Adrian's. So I'm getting pulled into a lot of listing presentations. I'm working with a lot of the agents outside of my EBU, so they're learning how to do things. And obviously, the chance of them closing a deal and getting listings is higher when they involve me, and vice versa. They're getting more leads. I'm getting, you know, so I think if I'm promoting this to someone outside of the office, why would you join? It's coming in. Firstly, it's coming into that culture. Secondly, it's breeding ground. I think for the, the the way that we work, we've refined it. The A to Z of real estate, we've really gone into great detail on how to sell a property really successfully. So we've gone into the detail on every single part of the process. So someone joining us will learn that. We've got
So
the
and
roadmap.
what are those core skills that you would say to Ivan, here's a desk, here's a phone. It's your first 6 months. What are you going to tell me to do?
Yep.
What are you going to coach me to do?
Well, I guess I'm going to lean on what I did. It's the hard work, it's the grind, it's the calling, it's the buyer work. I've learned a lot off of you about buyer work. It's all those core things that, you know, you go to Eric time and time again, that they're coaching you the same things. It's that compound interest. The harder you go, if you're working 10% harder than the person next to you, and you do that for a year, you're going to be doing 50, 60, 70% more than them within that time frame. So it's for me, it's about hard work. I just think 80% of what we do is that grind. And we learn that from Eric. You know, you come back from Eric, you're supercharged, you go hard, and you deliver for spring. But maybe the key message is always, when someone joins, it's not thinking about tomorrow, it's thinking about in 6 months' time, thinking about your pipeline for 6 months away, 12 months away, working that long-term pipeline. You know, always working that long-term pipeline. The short term will come.
Couple of quick questions, JB. Thanks, mate. How many pipeline sellers do you have on your pipeline?
So our
At any one
spring,
time?
well, we actually went through that yesterday. So we've got 35 that we think that will come on for spring already.
Hang on. Are they verbals, or are these ones that you're circling and trying to sign?
So there's a combination. So there's about 10 that are already signed.
Yeah.
And the rest of them, I'd say 15 of them probably pretty much, you know, verbally said that they'll come with us, and the others we're chasing.
Sorry, and I'm going to catch off a few times here. When you said 70 sales, is that your EBU this year, or is that your EBU financial year, or is that the whole business?
That's the EBU for this financial year. Yeah.
Good.
And
Thanks
the
for clarifying.
median selling price is around 4.
Yeah, that was my next question. So average sale price, guys and girls, 4 mil. Are you having a break anytime soon?
Yep. Yeah. In 2 weeks, going away for 3 weeks surfing.
Perfect. So 3 weeks surfing. So James, again, he's going away for 3 weeks surfing, which is good. What are you noticing at the moment? Is there a connection between the Palm Beach the upper northern beaches market and the eastern suburbs market? Is there a connection there at all?
Yeah, there is a connection, just in the sense that some of our buyers come from the eastern suburbs. They don't typically go the other way. It's the people are moving up here for lifestyle, but also to purchase their holiday homes as well.
Yeah, agree. Yeah. What are you noticing in the market at the moment that us as a group we'd like to know? What are you noticing up there?
Definitely the top end is pulled back a bit. I think the number of buyers that are circling, they've become a lot more price focused and way less buoyant. So we've got a few deals that are going through, but it's a lot slower than last year. The +10 market is a lot quieter. Also less listings as well. So I just think, you know, a lot of our vendors, when they know the market's quietening off, they just won't list.
Yeah.
The mums and dads markets, the 2 to 3 market is very transactional at the moment. It's probably our key part of the market. So my lens is not, it's focusing, because I work across that whole range. So the 2 to 15 market, we're focusing a little bit more on that 2 to 4. So the bread and butter part of the market, that's what's bringing the coin in at the moment.
And what sort of comms as a business, or are you achieving, JB, on generally average?
Anywhere between 165, including GST, to 2, including GST.
165 to 2.
And that's more price dependent. So the 1.5 plus GST is the prestige. Yeah. And then anywhere in between for the mums and dads market.
If I said to you, mate, if I asked you, what are the 3 best forms of prospecting over your career? You've been doing this for 15 years, 16 years successfully, or successfully for the last 10. what would you say are the three best forms of prospecting, James?
So I think there's definitely three parts to it. There's I mean I've always been a cold caller, so that's probably been the predominant way for me to bring business. But I've you can separate that into your long-term pipeline, just people you meet at open homes that are not necessarily selling right then, but you stay in contact with them forever until they sell. And then the sort of more lower hanging fruit that come to your open homes. But I'd say also door knocking. I didn't do, in hindsight, I didn't do enough of that when I was early in my career. I think that's so effective. I don't have time to do that now, but I've got like Cameron and my team's doing a lot of it now.
Yeah, sorry, you still think that door knocking and cold calling is a good avenue?
I think it's the core. I think it's 80% of what we should be doing. Yeah,
Interesting.
100%. I think too many people are hiding behind. I think social media has its place and marketing has its place and DLs have their place, but they're more of an add-on to what you do. They're I would say more of a 1% versus I think 80% should be that core cold calling. But that's just me. Everyone does it differently.
We're interested to hear. We're really interested to hear. If you've got a good question, I think, is how did you then go from selling a lot of 2s to 5s? How did you start looking at the bigger stuff, saying, I want to get a look in at that stuff? What was the shift? Was it a mental shift? Was it a strategy shift? Or was it a door knocking thing? How did you go from selling those to getting the bigger ones, James?
I think there was a big shift for me when I joined McGrath, to be fair. I think McGrath does have a more prestige name, and maybe because I joined McGrath, I felt like I had a better reason to call the higher price properties. So again, it was a belief thing. It was a belief thing, but it certainly helped me get indoors. The networking McGrath sort of helped. John McGrath's helped. There's been all sorts of ways that we've done it, but I think a lot of it was belief. It's not that I wasn't calling those people, but and I think the whole tenure of being in the business and calling the prestige properties, they were ignoring me for such a long period of time. And then I started, as you said, I started to get a bit of a track record, and it's just for me that my whole career has been a slow momentum. The momentum's built in what I've done in terms of sales, but the momentum's built over years in terms of the value. So it's been a slow grind, but it's I look back retrospectively, I go, that's someone I stayed in contact with for 5-6 years. Haven't spoken to them for 4 or 5 years, but they just remember me from those initial days when I was cold calling the hell out of the market and annoying everyone.
Do you reappoint for a listing, or do you just go for the one listing appointment and try to nail it on one, James?
I don't have a set rule. I really play it by ear. Just depends on the value of the property, the experience in that first meeting. But I like to reappoint. Generally speaking, I'd say 80% of the time I'm reappointing and going back. So I go.
A question everyone would have is, so how do you do that? So you go and see them. Do you tell them up front, I'm just going to come and see you, and then I'll come back again a second time, or how are you framing that?
Yes, I will frame it before and just say, look, I'd love to come around and have a chat, get a sense of them, the house. Sometimes the meeting goes so well, it just flows into let's get going. But a lot of the time, I like to sort of really understand who else they're seeing, what are the competition, what are they thinking price wise, and then return to try and obviously everyone likes to come and be the last person that they're seeing. But I think if you're going in once and just sending a proposal or not doing any follow-up, my hit rate will be 40%. It's currently sort of 95%. I pretty much list everything I go for.
Interesting. Then you're not going for enough, mate.
I'm not.
You're not going for enough. I was speaking to someone, can't remember who, and we're talking about the market, and we came to the conclusion at the moment that if you've had 5 listings, 1 will sell well with not much trouble. 3 at the moment are going to be an arm wrestle, right, between the vendor and the buyers, and it's an arm wrestle trying to do the deal, and 1 out of 5 is not going to sell. right? That's kind of, so if you had 10 listings, 2 are just going to walk out the door, 6 are going to be an arm wrestle, but you'll probably sell them, and 2 probably won't sell, and you're going to withdraw them. That's what I
Yeah.
feel like is what we're seeing in the market. Agree? Any thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think for me, the set for sale meeting has become so important. And I think that's been one of the secrets of a change in my career. As
And
soon as I started,
when do you do that, James? At what point do you do this?
so once the marketing has been completed, so we catch up just to sign that all off, and then we talk through the whole listing, the set for, we talk about, I call it an expectations meeting. Everyone's got a different name for it, but I like my owner to understand how an agent thinks. So for me, an owner needs to understand that the first 2 weeks of a campaign is where the action happens. The A grade buyers come through. And after the third open home, so Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, we sit down and we have a review meeting with all of our clients. And they know that that review meeting is to look at the 3 possibilities. We've either got no buyers, or we've got a bunch of buyers that, have interest in coming to our auction, or we have a bunch of buyers and one buyer that just is so keen he wants to overpay for it. So they're expecting that meeting. They know that we talk about numbers, we talk about contracts out, we talk about case studies in a set for sale meeting about what's a good, what's a bad, what's a an okay sort of campaign. So that, and I talk very heavily about energy versus sort of like price feedback. I talk about energy. So if we've got a price guide, there should be really, really good energy if we're going to go crazy above. If we've got a price guide and there's medium average sort of energy, well, is probably going to go slightly above. And if there's no energy at all, we've got the price guide completely wrong. So I'm focusing on that in that sort of set for sale, also protecting your listing as well, and talking about what other agents will do, talking about what they should and shouldn't be saying in the marketplace and to their neighbours and friends. It's all obvious stuff. I'm sure you've all heard, the set for sale process.
No, we haven't. We hear from different
but
people.
I didn't do it before. I didn't do it before. So I get that buyer, the buyer curve.
Yeah.
So you have the buyer curve, and I split that into 2 parts. I make it visual, so they've got more chance of remembering it and paying attention to what we're talking about.
Could you
first half of the
James? Can you do me a
Sorry?
favor? Can you send me a copy of that buyer curve? Is it an actual visual?
Yeah. So I can send you a copy. Yeah.
Can you forward it to me so I can forward it to the group? Because I reckon that's a good one.
Yeah.
That tells you that you've got all these buyers week 1, and then it just goes down and down and down and down and down as the time goes on. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's sort of pretty 101 real estate. I think it's splitting it up into the first 2 weeks of the campaign of when your A grade buyers come through. The second 2 weeks are when your B grade buyers are going to come through. So owners are seeing that, they're going, okay, so these first 3 open homes are so important for the campaign. If we're not on track, we're going to be talking about a price reduction, or if we're super on track, well, maybe we're lifting our price guide. But also I talk about in that graph, I talk about the times where it's great to negotiate. Yeah. So we don't want to be negotiating after the first open home. We need time on market to get feedback. We need to make sure we're getting 80% of the A grade buyers through in those first 3 open homes.
Yes.
And so a great time to negotiate. So, I've got an example right now. We've got a property that we've been on the market for 4 open homes, 2 Saturdays and 2 Wednesdays. And we've got a buyer that's sort of interacting with us, and we've got no one else. And the owners are going, right, yeah, okay, well, this is what you said. We need to negotiate now, versus how I used to work. And you're trying to educate them after the event.
Yeah.
And they're not believing you, because they think, well, you're just a real estate agent that just wants to close a deal. So I've just found that whole set for sale, particularly the ebbs and flows of a campaign, and what we know. I say to an owner, if I rock up to my first open home and there's a queue of people standing outside your house before the start, that's a great sign. These are the sort of the little nuances and things that we're looking for.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Can we just finish up on lifestyle, mate? How important if you're a real estate agent in today's world, how important do you think an agent has to consider their lifestyle outside work, or when all the things that go with lifestyle. How important do you think that is, mate, to help people on their journey?
I think it's huge, and I
Mm.
have to tip my hat to you, Ivan, for having a bet with me last year to not drink.
We did
That's
have a bet.
that's been a
How much
that's
did you
been
win?
I forget what it was. Was it two and a half grand?
$2,000 I paid you.
$2,000 was, yeah.
So if
thank you
James
for
had
that.
one drink, this was annoying. That was an annoying one. If James had one drink, he would have owed me $5,000.
Yeah.
And if he didn't do it, I'd give him $2,000. So it was weighted. It was a pretty fair thing, but he killed it in the end. So I had to give him $2,000, which was annoying. Keep going.
That was a game changer for me. I mean, I've been drinking, being a POM, been drinking since I was 16. Never had a year off, never had a month off. So that was massive for me. So just the energy, the clarity, everything changed. It just made me look very differently on life. But from a work perspective, massive shift. So, and then I think when you give up drinking, you also start realizing the other things that are affecting you. So, for example, I'm a sugar head. I love to have chocolate at night. And so I started realizing that the sugar was waking me up in the middle of the night. So I'm sure you've all had those sleeps where you wake up at 3 in the morning and you're thinking about work and you're processing and you're worrying about stuff that you shouldn't be worrying about. You wake, then you get out of bed at 8 in the morning. You think, why was I worrying about that silly thing at 3 in the morning? Well, it's anxiety that's being induced by the sugar or alcohol that you ate or drank at 7, 8 o'clock at night. So I've cut out alcohol. I've cut out eating sugar after sort of 6 o'clock or anything after 6 o'clock. So Mark Boris actually at ARIC did, I think most of his speech was about sleep. I took a lot away from that, stuff that I already knew, but it was sleep, what he ate and drinking and all those kind of things. So from a health perspective, I train 4 or 5 times a week. I do a bit of yoga, started to do a bit of meditation. I surf. So it's a big component of work life, having that balance. I'm 52, so anything you do now sort of has a bit more of an impact on you when you're 30.
Did you say you're 52 now?
Yeah.
It's good to have you on board, because you're a mature age agent who's doing really well. I remember when you turned 50. That's gone quick, but that's really good. Back to Adam and Bobby. So I had a point that his team is a mature team as well. So he said tenure is important. It's a bit different to like a Bresic Whitney or whatever, where there's lots of 20 or young 30s. He's got a mature age team, which I think helps him with his prestige property and things like that. JB, we've got a lot to get through as a team. I found that really helpful. If anyone's got any questions before James goes, now, has anyone got any questions? You can take your microphone off and ask. If not, we might say goodbye to James. Really helpful, James. I think it's great, mate. Well done. Oh, yeah,
pleasure.
just on your database, how do you two questions. When you say cold calling still good, you would just ring, and what would the dialogue be?
So if I rewind back 16 years ago, it was more just introducing. I normally had a reason to call. The far easier calls to make. It would have been a sale, could have been someone else's sale. It was normally something would have been of interest to that owner.
Yes.
And obviously, as you start listing and selling more, then you've got more of a reason to call. But a lot of it was just touching base. There wasn't really I don't think a lot of my touch bases were, people felt like I was trying to get something out, and there's no commission breath there. It was just make contact. After I think it was Matt Steinway that said if 9, 10 contacts, people respond with "Hey mate, how are you?" It's just that familiarity, and then when you start selling more and more, they already know your name.
Yep. And a door knock, just because I never did it. But if you walked up to a door, what would you say? You'd knock on the door and say, "Hey, I'm James Baker from McGrath Avalon," and what?
Yeah, there's I forget what his name. Bob. He's an American guy. I remember listening to one of his CDs ages ago.
Yeah.
It could have been Bob Wolf, but it was so you door knock and you just say, "Look, I'm James, I'm a real estate agent. Are you wanted to see if you got any plans for real estate. And generally speaking, they'll say no. And you say, well, where would you move to if you do move? Oh, well, we'll probably eventually move up to the Gold Coast. Well, when are you thinking of doing that? And then, they say, well, maybe in 2 or 3 years' time, do you mind if I stay in contact? So that was so I always tried to get an understanding of when someone was going to do something. Because a lot of people, you door knock and I'm not thinking of selling. No, okay, no, and off to the next. You got nothing out of that interaction. But if you ask when you're going to do something, I thought, then okay, this person's going to sell in a year or 2 years or 5 years. That was huge. And the other question I would always ask is, well, who do you think is going to be the next person on the street that will sell? That's a fantastic question to ask.
That's a good
because they always stop and they go, oh, well, they've been renovating over there, or maybe Bob's going to be doing something, or so those 2 questions I think are game changers, because you're just getting way more value out of that precious time. It takes a lot of courage, I think, to go and knock on someone's door. They've never met you, but if you're getting something out of it, then at least a little bit of information.
Good. None of the agents in this group are on the Northern Beaches. If anyone sent you a referral from this group, and I'm just talking hypothetically, and said, oh, James, I've got someone who wants to sell their house in Bilgola, what referral fee would you pay that agent?
There's 20%.
20%. Okay. Good for everybody to know. JB, you're a legend, mate. Have a good break. I'll see you.
Thanks, Ivan.
I'll see you at the back end of July.
How'd you go, Patrick?
All the best. All the best with the end of the financial year and that deal. And mate, thanks for coming along.
Pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Legend. See you, champion. Bye, mate.
See you all. Thanks. Bye-bye.